This Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern, history sets sail.
I'm going to have all folks from the Navy, national security experts. You do not want to miss this.
President Donald J. Trump arrives in Norfolk, Virginia, aboard a mighty U.S. aircraft carrier.
Fight, 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 win, win, win.
As America celebrates 250 years of Navy power, brace yourself for missile launches, roaring jets, thunderous firepower, and the full force of America's sea strength on display. Hosted by Steve Bannon, with live reporting from Jack Posobiec and Steve Gruber. Real America's Voice brings you this front row seat to freedom in motion. It's not just coverage, it's a celebration of America's might. RAV presents America 250. Sea power and freedom. Coverage begins this Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern. See you there.
Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice Newsbreak. Thanks so much for being here with us. It is day 3 of the government shutdown, and President Trump is warning that there could be firings and project cuts if the shutdown continues. Taking to Truth Social on Thursday, the commander-in-chief saying that he was set to meet with the director of the Office of Budget and Management, Russ Vought. They discussed which government agencies should face mass firings and which Democrat projects should be cut. 47 toying with the idea of giving Americans rebate checks from new tariff revenues as well. He says those revenues are projected to reach $1 trillion a year, with some of the funds slated to pay down the national debt, which is approaching $38 trillion. As for the rebate checks to American taxpayers, the president says anything between $1,000 and $2,000 is possible. Police in Manchester, England, are calling Thursday's deadly attack at a synagogue an act of terror. At least 2 people are dead, 3 others hurt. Investigators confirmed the suspect plowed into a crowd of worshipers with a car outside the synagogue and then went on a stabbing spree. All of this happened on Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. The guy was eventually shot and killed. We now know he's a 35-year-old British citizen who immigrated from Syria. That's a quick check of your headlines.
Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. This is Andrew Colvett, executive producer of this show, joined by Mikey McCoy. You're going to be important in this segment, given your background.
I know. I know 1 or 2 things about pastors.
Yeah, exactly. Blake Neff, and then Pastor Jonathan Ahern. Did I get that right? Because it sounds so much better in your accent.
Yeah, John Ahern. That's
right.
John Ahern.
John Ahern. You had to know that was going to come when you come with the thick Irish accent.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. I'm so glad to have you on set. You were in town, and you're actually it's one of our team members. His dad also runs a church in town, and you guys were connected by that. And I was like, this is amazing. So you tell us what you do. You are, I think it's safe to say, one of the biggest Protestant preachers in Ireland, But you sort of have this ecumenical call across Europe to lift up the name of Jesus and the identity, the Christian identity of Europe. And it's so powerful because you've been doing these marches with thousands and thousands of people through the streets of Dublin or Belfast. And it sounds like you're going to be taking that work even beyond Ireland.
Well, this is the reality. Christianity will survive without Europe. Europe will not survive without Christianity. And so I suppose for myself as a pastor, I pastor a church in Dublin, All Nations Church, and in Belfast. But in reality, looking at the larger scheme of things in the European continent, we need an awakening. Things aren't going on the right path at present, but there have been stirrings, and across Europe, there's been about 15 cities this year that have had marches for Jesus.
Wow!
And so there is a new generation that are turning to Christ, and certainly I think for many of us, looking at what has happened in the States, even seeing the funeral of the late Charlie Kirk, and just how a nation can turn towards Christ, and to see that awakening that's happening, because You know, 5 years ago, America was in quite a different place. You know,
2 years ago, 1 year ago.
Yeah, well, you had a government that was promoting wokeness, not just here, but internationally. And
Yes.
and we were dealing with much of that over in Europe. And so...
I apologize on
yeah,
behalf of Americans.
Certainly, I think a lot of us have taken hope because we're watching America and we're seeing how there is an awakening happening in real time. There's a new generation that's turning to Christ.
Yes.
And we believe that the hope and the answer is found in the gospel of Christ. And like I said, I mean, you know, we had 25,000 people last Saturday.
I think we have
March.
some video of this. Can we play it for the stream so they can see it? I mean, this is a big accomplishment in Ireland.
Yeah.
Maybe getting 25. Yeah, here we go. I think this is clips from your March for Jesus, and it's a really powerful thing. You know, we were talking before you came on, and just, you know, in politics, right? We believe, you know, billboards and yard signs are actually important. The physical presence, you know, it's not just digital ads, it's not just podcasts, but this is why we have live events. This is why we do AmFest. This is why we do gatherings on college campuses, because that IRL, in real life, is so human and necessary. And so you put this big physical presence on the streets of Dublin and Belfast and then across Europe, and your goal of reasserting that Christian identity takes on flesh.
Well, you know, we had 8,000 people march in Belfast about a month ago, and 25, like I said, last week in Dublin. And one of the first things we did was to publicly reaffirm the Christian identity of our nations, because whether you're talking about Ireland, Great Britain, or any of the nations of Europe, our history is a Christian history. It's not a Muslim history or a Buddhist history or a Hindu history or an atheist history. It's a Christian history. And you've had secular governments who've been methodically erasing or seeking to erase and undermine.
Yes. Speaking of which, you know, we learned this from James Orr, Dr. James Orr, who is he's a professor at Cambridge. He was on the show. He spent time with Charlie. And when they were... You know, he says, and obviously it must be true if he's saying it. He's a very credible person. I haven't double checked, but when they were creating the UN Charter, there was a bit of an argument about whether we include Christianity in the charter, and they opted to not.
Well, the EU Constitution...
Or was it did I say UN? I meant EU.
It was the EU Constitution. There was no mention of God. You know, particularly bearing in mind, you think of the greatest achievements of Europe in terms of architecture and art and literature. Christ was at the center of so much of what was accomplished and what, you know, ultimately created what we know as Western civilization. And so... You know, certainly for us, I believe it's something we have to fight for. And like I said, it's you know, there's a saying that nature abhors a vacuum, and that you know, the reality is there has been a spiritual vacuum in much of Western civilization, and that's why it's coming apart at the seams.
I'm going to throw to Blake here, because Blake traveled. Well, I guess you both did. You traveled with Charlie to the UK, which obviously is not Ireland, but close neighbors, same language, a lot of the shared history. And it really became clear to me after Charlie's death that he was a prophet and that he was calling nations to repent. And Blake and Mikey traveled with him on that tour. And, I mean, Blake, you saw it firsthand. I mean, what was the reaction then? And then I'm interested kind of what the reaction has been since. But take us into that moment.
Well, it was just, obviously when you get in there, it's just very depressing because you have this strong sense that it's kind of like a post-Christian state. Yeah. You have this, it gets really sad because you walk around central London, you have all these like statues and such that are beautiful, great Christian figures, beautiful churches everywhere. But then the storefronts, Arabic language, large, you know, there's mosques all over the city as well. Obviously, a very large share of the population is Muslim. And it's like that in huge chunks of the UK. I'm sure you saw a lot of that too.
And I just want to point out, there is a decline in Christianity in Ireland. In 2006, 90% of the country was Christian. Now you guys are around 65%. And so I see a lot of young people that are marching in the streets. Do you feel like it's old people that aren't necessarily aligning. And then at the same time, you see an increase of Islam.
Well, you
in
know, the
Ireland.
last 20 years, you know, we've had the great awakening, so to speak. But I believe we're starting to see a great awakening. And there's a younger generation who've had LGBT shoved down their throats, left, right, and centre. You know, so many of our institutions have been ideologically captured. You know, because when you have elected members of government saying there's 8 or more genders, and they've been pushing all of this radical sex education in our schools, etc. And I think there's a generation that are tired of that. They've seen through that, and they're looking for reality. Since COVID, the number one selling book has been the Bible, and not just in Ireland, but in so many, the UK and across Europe. And there is a generation that are seeking, and this is a day, I believe, for the church to be prophetic, to be bold, and to step into the gap and shine the light and show people the way forward.
And this is exactly what Charlie did. It's a longer clip. It's about a minute long, but on September 2nd, so 8 days before Charlie was assassinated and robbed from us, one of the last things he was really doing was raising the alarm about Islam. And I believe that God placed that on his heart because it needs to be the focus moving forward. So let's go ahead and play 150.
You look at Europe, the Islamist invasion brought to you by the secular humanist European technocratic elites is making Europe worse. It's making Europe dirtier. It's making Europe less safe. It has no cultural identity. It's decaying and collapsing as a nation. There's no European identity left whatsoever. And the worst part of it is that it's invited. Islamism has a tendency to take over and metastasize like a cancer. Immigration without assimilation is invasion, and Islam does not assimilate. Islam conquers. Islam takes over. Islam devours. Islam is an imperialistic, parasitic ideology. Islam views itself as a conquering faith. You have to pray 5 times a day, pointing towards a separate nation, pledging fealty to another nation. Islam's own self-story is that we will take you over. It's totalitarianism masked as a religion.
Yeah. And on full display, you see in the Congo, there's 70 Christians being beheaded. Nigeria, there's 7,000 Christians killed.
There's been over
this year.
100,000 Christians in Nigeria killed by, was it Boko Haram? Or is
Yes.
that,
But that's when Islam fully takes over. And
well, that's when they're trying to, right?
in the
Nigeria.
UK, you can get arrested for posting negatively about Islam.
Or about immigration
About
in general,
immigration.
about rape gangs or anything like that. Yeah.
We just had the attack in Manchester the other day by a guy whose name literally translates to jihadi from Syria. Like his name was like Jihad al-Shem, which is the kind of
there's
Arabic
been a
name for
huge
it.
rise in anti-Semitism, and I think a lot of it is rooted in the Islamization of Europe, and that's where, again, you know, I don't believe politics can save Europe. I think only a spiritual awakening can save Europe, returning to its roots and, you know, proclaiming the gospel. Because ultimately our battle is not against flesh and blood. People aren't our problem. Ultimately, it's the fact that we need to, I guess, see a new generation come to Christ and rediscover the values that Charlie spoke so eloquently of. And I mean, certainly I think he gave a lot of us hope.
Are you seeing the Charlie effect in Europe at all? Is it too soon to see? Okay.
Well, it's funny, at the march, we took a moment to honor him, and you know, there was a big cheer from the crowd, and I think there was a lot of people. You know, he had the ability, I think, to kind of transcend the world of politics and religion, and I guess connect with a generation who didn't necessarily understand Christianity or Christ, but he was able to break, you know, spiritual truth down and present it in a secular environment. And I mean, what he did was so brave going into colleges, because he was going into colleges during peak wokeness, and it took a lot of courage to do what he did. And you know, I think there's a lot of people in Europe who have a great admiration for the fact that he was connecting a new generation with Christ.
Yeah, amen. You got a thought?
Yeah, I agree. I think Charlie would always warn and challenge. I think that Islam is probably the biggest threat to Ireland right now, outside of the decline in Christianity.
Well,
and I think wokeism is a big issue, but Charlie said it, Islam's a cancer. It's a military wrapped as a religion. it will take you guys over. I feel like.
Well, and Charlie was always very clear to break down the distinction between micro and macro. We're not saying there aren't, his family doctor here in Arizona. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, is Muslim, but he's a moderate Muslim that's preaching for moderation throughout the Muslim world. But what we're talking about are these mass immigration moves, right? And the fact that the UK and Denmark and France, I mean, it's like across the board in Europe, this just massive move of people. And and all the population increase in the UK is coming from immigration from Muslim nations. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's not just the first wave. They're outbreeding you. They have way higher fertility rates. So hold on 1 second there, Pastor. I'll let you respond in just a second. Done with debt. You're buried in credit card and loan debt. It's human nature to put it off and say, I'll deal with it later, but you need to deal with it now. Because the Done With Debt guys have come up with a strategy, and they've shared it with us on the show. They believe in aggressively going after this immediately because they then know which lenders and credit card companies are doing year-end accounting and need to cut deals. They even know which ones have year-end audits and need to get your debt off the books. That means you need to go get started with Done With Debt in September or in October now. Done With Debt accomplishes this without bankruptcy or new loans. In fact, most clients end up with more money in their pockets in the first month. Get started now while you still have time. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. We'll be right back. More with Pastor John Ahern.